Chapter 10, 4th of July, Liberty Wagon. Ella flung the reins to Frank and hurried to the cabin, fairly bursting with her good news. Ma, oh Ma, she called excitedly. Guess what May told me at school today? Just guess what she said. She was talking about the Liberty Wagon. She said that already some folks are making 4th of July plans. She stopped short, suddenly aware that Ma was not there. As Pa's old pendulum clock ticked noisily in the late afternoon stillness, Ella felt the chill of the log cabin press in upon her. Where was Ma? Why, when they came hurrying in from school, Ma was always home, with the fire crackling cheerily in the black kitchen stove and the iron tea kettle singing a welcome song from its steaming spout. Now, without Ma, the house seemed empty and forlorn. The black stove stared mockingly from its gray-ashed eyelets. Ella whirled and ran to the door. Frank, she called, where's Ma? She isn't here. I don't know, Frank replied, shaking his head. Her team's gone, but maybe somebody's sick. You know how folks always send for Ma when something goes wrong. Don't worry, though. She's well able to take care of herself and all the rest of us, too. Oh, I know that, grumbled Ella, but I've got something to ask her. And anyway, I don't like to come home and not have Ma here to meet us at the door. If she'd gone to the neighbors, she'd have left a note, like she always does. Here she comes, Ella. Here she comes now, yelled George, as he ran to open the gate for the team. Ella thought how good it was to see Ma drive into the muddy dooryard, sitting straight back and smiling in her next to best black alpaca dress and warm wrap. While the boys stabled the team, Ma hurried into the cabin and held her hands over the stove's warmth, trying at the same time to listen to Ella's excited chatter. Now, just a minute, young lady, Ma interrupted briskly. Before I try to make head and tail out of what you're saying, let me get in a word or two. I've got some news that'll really surprise all of you. I'll wait until the boys come in so I won't have to keep repeating myself. Sit down, family, urged Ma as she took a crisp letter out of her worn purse and began reading. Ella couldn't believe her ears. Thought she couldn't she thought she couldn't have heard aright. She was so excited that she forgot all about Mary and the Liberty Wagon. Speechless, she stared at Ma. Skip and Frank and George stared too. But finally, Ella found part of her voice and spoke in a squeaky whisper. You you're going to be postmistress in a real post office? A US post office? And will move to Burns and live there in the back of a house with a post office in the front part of the house? Why, Ma, why, how, I can't believe I couldn't either just at first. That's why I'm so late after Ladies' Aid meeting. I got word today that I'd been appointed postmistress. I declare, children, I still don't see, it still doesn't seem possible. But is it? Questioned Skip, his eyes bright with interest. How could it be true, Ma, if you don't know anything about it? Why didn't, why, you didn't even ask for the job. Of course I didn't, Ma answered excitedly, but my friends asked, all unbeknownst to me. When our postmaster died a while back, our friends took it upon themselves to write to the Postmaster General to have me appointed to the Burns Post Office. They said they felt I needed it, being alone with you youngsters now that Pa's gone. Here's the appointment, right here in this letter. You can read it for yourselves. Four heads crowded close to Ma's. Four pairs of wide, wondering eyes stared at the fascinating letter held proudly in Ma's toil-worn hands. But it was not until each one had read and reread it, line by line, that they were able to accept fully their wonderful good fortune. "I'll ride back and forth and tend the place here," volunteered Skip. "I'm old enough now to look after our ranch and keep it going, just as Pa did." "And I'll help Ma in the post office," exclaimed Ella, dazed by the suddenness of the new plan. "Just think, I'll get to be Ma's clerk. I'll get paid by the United States government. 12 whole dollars a month. My, what a lot of money I'll earn. And no doubt your Ma will do most of your work except during vacations." Ma interrupted briskly, rising to her feet and carefully refolding the precious letter. "You'll get your fair share of what you earn, but remember that part of that $12 will have to go toward living expenses. It can't be spent on clothes and ruffles and new hats from the Gage sisters' millinery shop. Money's too scarce to waste on foolish fashions. Waste not, want not, your pa always used to say when we were first married, and it's a good motto now as then. So don't get ideas over that big salary, my girl. We'll have all we can do to make ends meet as it is. I won't be paid any regular amount. Near as I can figure, I'll be paid according to the number of stamps and stamped envelopes sold and the number of boxes rented. I understand that if we take in not over $50 a quarter, I'll get all of that. But if we take in 150, I'll get only 60% of that amount, or $90. If we take in $350, our share will be half, or 175, every 3 months. Our expenses in town will be more than they were out here. If but if we're thrifty, we'll make out just fine. And I'm surely thankful for this opportunity. But it'll be work too. So don't any of you get the idea that life's going to be all play as soon as we get in town." It seemed to Ella that they'd never get moved. Sometimes she dreaded to leave the big log cabin where they had all been so happy when Pa was with them. But more often she lay restlessly awake, tense with excitement at the prospect of living in a real town. She thrilled at the thought of being near several stores. She thought happily that now, regardless of the weather, she could attend regularly the newly organized Sunday school exercises and programs. Once they were settled comfortably in Burns' home, the months flew by. Their term of school no longer ended in March. Then the calendar fairly jumped ahead into May. And then once again, the talk centered on the year's outstanding event, the colorful 4th of July parade and the Liberty Wagon. For days the girls met and whispered among themselves as to which ones would be asked to help decorate. This most important float, the float upon which would ride none other than the beautiful goddess of liberty, the second importance angel of peace, and the 44 little girls representing the 44 states. They scarcely dared hint who might be chosen as the goddess of liberty, but each one secretly wished with all her heart that she would be the fortunate one. When Ella learned that she and none other, was to be the white-robed goddess, she actually pinched herself black and blue to learn whether she was awake or dreaming. "I can't believe it," she said one evening when Skip had come in from the ranch and had sat down at the table with them. "I still don't know how I was chosen." The girls thought sure that May would be the lucky one. She's got naturally curly yellow hair and a perfect, beautiful complexion. Of course, she's going to be the angel of peace. But they said she's mad as can be that she wasn't first choice. I'd like to know who picked me out. You would? Do you skip? Ella saw that his merry eyes were twinkling, just as Pa's used to do. You'd really like to know? Well, I expect I could tell you. I know a couple of folks who were on the committee, and our shy young man was one of them. I guess he must have had plenty to say as to who he reckoned was the most beautiful girl in Burns. Now, Skip, that's enough, Ma scolded. Ella's still a young girl, and I won't have silly ideas put into her head. If that young man was kind enough to suggest your sister's name, we should appreciate it and not make fun of him. But if he's got any serious intentions, I'll have to take a firm hand. Ella's far too young to have a regular caller. I think you must be wrong. The only time I've ever seen him is when he comes to the post office. The only time? Choked Frank, guffawing loud. Why, Ma, he's in there about every day. I'll wager he's got enough postage stamps right now to set himself up in the stamp business. What's he want to buy so many for if not to see Ella? I never see him mail a single letter, but he's always asking for one kind of stamp or another. If there's a bunch of pretty purple 3 centers in plain sight, he'll ask for a beautiful green 10-cent one way back in the drawer. Or he'll say, My, Miss Ella, isn't this black 30-cent Jefferson stamp most interesting? Who else cared about the pretty colors or the pictures on them? Other folks just lick 'em and stick 'em on their letters and mail 'em. It's plumb disgusting. Shame on you, Frank, said Ma as Ella burst into tears and fled to her room. Now you'll have her imagining a lot of nonsense about that bashful young man. He's always spoken really polite to us. Don't you say another word to her about this, mind you. Not another word. But already Ella had dried her tears and resolved to smile her best and nicest smile at the shy young man as she rode slowly down the dusty street in the wonderful Fourth of July parade. She smiled an extra nice smile, just in case he had been the one who had chosen her. She tried to look her best so that he wouldn't be disappointed in her appearance, and think that, after all, May should be the goddess of liberty. May, with her naturally curly yellow hair and her peaches and cream complexion. Ella resolved fiercely to spread Ma's thickest buttermilk whey on her face and hands every night before she went to bed and try to bleach her freckles, although she shuddered at the thought of the cracking mask made by the way as it dried stiffly on her tender skin. At last, days before the parade, the lovely white goddess of liberty robe was finished. Breathlessly, Ella tried it on in front of Ma's cracked mirror. In awed happiness, she stared at her complexion, the full, flowing white cheesecloth robe, the glittering tinfoil crown, the star-tipped scepter held gracefully in her hand. She waved the wand with a queenly gesture and wondered how she would possibly wait longer for the great day. Oh, Ma, it's beautiful. Ella leaned forward. Her nose almost touched the glass as she looked lovingly at herself. Don't I look just grand? Pretty is as pretty does, said Ma sensibly. And remember, pride goes before a fall. But I must admit that you do make a nice enough goddess. She looked critically at Ella and then continued. The night before the 4th, I'll do your hair up on rags. I expect it ought to dry, hang down around you in curls, even if they aren't natural ones. At least that's what last year's goddess did. So we'll do the same. And you'd better start using that way. It'll make your skin soft and smooth if you'll be careful to wear your sunbonnet outside all week. Otherwise, you'll be as brown as mahogany. Oh, I will, Ma, Ella promised. I will. I'll start tonight. I want to look just right for the parade. Everybody's going to be there. After she had slipped into her long-sleeved, high-necked muslin nightgown, Ella stood in front of the marble top dresser and tightly twisted her front hair into curlers. Then she began smoothing on the cool, curled whey left over from Ma's last making of Dutch cheese. She shuddered at its sticky clamminess spread over her face and hardened into a milky mask. Then, as she pressed her fingers deep into her left cheek, she flinched. Hastily, she lifted the lamp and stared at her reflection, but the wavering light revealed no mark. A faint uneasiness stirred deep inside her as she held her cupped hand near the top of the lamp chimney and quickly blew out the tiny flame. But she shrugged the warning aside to drift into a sleep untroubled by the knobby curl papers, the stiffening whey mask, or the discomforting twinge. But that proved to be Ella's last restful night's sleep for some time. Ma hurried into the bedroom in response to Ella's early morning wail. Oh, Ma, just look at my cheek. It's sore as can be, and see how it's swelling? Do you think it's anything serious, Ma? Ma leaned close and gently touched the swollen cheek with her work-roughened fingertips. Ella's heart sank down to her toes as she watched Ma slowly shake her head. Her eyes brimmed with tears as Ma spoke sadly. Ch-ch. I'm afraid it really is something, Ella. It looks like a boil. A big one, too. A boil? Oh, no, Ma, it can't be. Oh, surely you're mistaken. Her lips quivered as she swallowed hard, and she shudderingly pictured a white-robed goddess of liberty with a boil swollen left cheek. There, there, Ma soothed. Get up and wash the tear stains and that sticky whey off your face. You'll feel better to get rid of those at least. I'll see what I can do with some hot poultices. But a boil's something that simply can't be hurried. That and a balky mule. They both require lots of time. True to her word, Ma skillfully and patiently poulticed the feverish, ever-swelling cheek. Day after day it increased in size and redness until Ella wept tearfully that she looked as if half of her face had turned into a beet. Finally she felt that she couldn't stand the pain another instant. The doctor's lancing helped some, but still most of the swelling remained. It'll take a while to go down, Ellie, the kindly doctor advised. Can't hurry those ornery things along. Cheer up. You'll be as fit as a fiddle in a few more days. Face'll be as good as new by next week, and you'll be going places same as usual. Next week, wailed Ella, but I'm in the 4th of July parade tomorrow. I'm going to be the goddess of liberty. Then I guess you'll just have to drape your hair across that side of your face, said the doctor, because that boil's going to show up as plain as the red bunting on the Liberty wagon. But the very next day, the surprised doctor found that he had reckoned without Ella's determination. For there, firmly seated on the throne in the much decorated red, white, and blue Liberty wagon, sat Ella, goddess of liberty. She sat proudly high above the angel of peace, and the 44 white clad and state labeled little girls. Her flowing white robe spread out in neat folds, and her thick corkscrew curls fell springily down her back, around her shoulders, and across one bulging cheek. Seen from the right side, she looked beautiful, smiling queenly. Seen from the left side, she looked as if she were unwillingly holding a very large, unpleasant mouthful of something extremely distasteful. But I don't care, thought Ella, as long as he doesn't see my ugly side. Oh, if Skip only finds him in time and takes him to the right place. He simply got to. He promised he would. She looked carefully along the crowded street. Then her face lighted up with a half smile on one side and a half grimace on the other, as she saw the two for whom she had been looking. She inclined her head with a queenly nod, at the same time being very careful to keep her face turned toward the front. Good old Skip, she thought. He's a good brother. For there, standing on the right hand side of the street, where they could not possibly see the swollen left side of her face, were smiling Skip and the shy young man. Right behind them, however, stood grinning Frank. He held his hand high above the shy young man's head and waved it back and forth to attract her attention. She set her lips and pointed the scepter straight toward her younger brother Frank in a gesture of queenly displeasure, as she saw the long and colorful roll of stamps that dangled from his firmly clenched fingers. Just you wait, Frank Whitting, she thought. Just you wait until the parade and the speeches and the picnic dinner's over and we get home. I'll see that you get the surprise of your life. You won't think you've been very funny when I make you pay for every one of those postage stamps.